And as you're familiar with BYD, which is also on the West Coast, I think they're ramping up production of their electric vehicles. Warren Buffett owns 10% stake in that. Why do you laugh? Trying to compete. Why do you laugh?
Have you seen that car?
I have seen their cars. Yes. In fact, at the
seen the
Berkshire Hathaway
Cybertruck?
meeting, I saw their cars. Tell me why you're laughing. You don't see them at all as a competitor.
No.
Why is that?
I don't think they have a great product.
And
So aloha and welcome back to Across the Spectrum. And on this video, we're going to go across the spectrum in China. We just talked about BYD a little bit. I just showed BYD catching up to Tesla and about to surpass Tesla pretty soon, I'm sure. So now this is China, how they're turning a desert into a lush forest. They're building a green wall against the, I think it's the Gobi Desert. I'm not sure exactly. I forget now. But they're going to say it in the video. So they're building a green wall to protect cities.
What if I told...
I like China. I like how they're real technology advanced, and they really do a lot of stuff for their people, right? So I just like to cover them here and there and just show how they do.
you that China is turning its largest desert into a forest. Not just any forest, but the largest artificial forest in human history. In the 1970s, China faced a massive environmental crisis. Deserts were expanding at an alarming rate, swallowing up usable land and threatening communities. Sandstorms would regularly blast through cities, turning skies orange and making life unbearable for millions. The situation was so dire that some areas were losing thousands of hectares of productive land every year. Imagine waking up one morning to find your city buried in sand.
That's crazy.
It was not just a dusty day, but waves of sand hundreds of feet high swallowing entire neighborhoods. This wasn't a scene from a science fiction movie. It was reality for millions in China, where one of Earth's largest deserts, the Gobi, was literally consuming cities, farms, and villages. The Chinese government recognized the need for a bold solution, something unprecedented. Their answer was the 3 North Shelter Forest Program, now globally known as the Great Green Wall. Take a look at this image. These green patches spreading across northern China weren't here 40 years ago. Let me put this project into perspective.
What's the best way to reduce?
Imagine taking an area larger than all of Western Europe and deciding to transform it into a lush green forest. That's exactly what China is doing. But first, let's understand why China needs this massive project. Right now, 1/3 of China's farmland is disappearing. Not from urban development or industrial expansion, but from an enemy that's been growing for decades, the desert. This crisis didn't happen overnight. Back in the 1950s, China's rapid industrialization led to massive deforestation. Trees that had held the soil in place for centuries were cut down. Without this natural barrier, the desert began its relentless march forward. The Gobi Desert was swallowing up 3,600 square kilometers of grassland every single year. Imagine watching your farmland, your home, your entire community slowly disappear under waves of sand. Cities would vanish under dust storms, and farmers could only watch as their fields turned to wasteland. In Beijing, residents once faced over 50 dust storms every year. These weren't just minor inconveniences. We're talking about storms so powerful they shut down cities, grounded flights, and forced millions indoors. The numbers tell a devastating story here. These storms caused respiratory diseases to spike by 300%. Crop yields plummeted by 40%. And the economic losses? Well, a staggering $54 billion annually. But in 1978, China decided to fight back. They launched what would become the largest ecological engineering project in history. The goal was to create a 4,500-kilometer forest barrier, literally a wall of trees, to stop the desert in its tracks. Think about...
See, I like how when China has a problem or sees a problem, they try to solve it. Like America's just like, we'll let the system do it, or we'll let the invisible hand do it. whatever.
That distance for a moment. 4,500 kilometers. That's longer than the entire US-Mexico border. And they're not just planting a single line of trees. This is a forest system that, in some places, stretches 100 kilometers wide. The scale of this project is mind-boggling. Let me put this project's scale into perspective. The planned forest area covers 4.069 million square kilometers. That's larger than all of Western Europe combined.
I wanted to see that last time. Western Europe, isn't Italy considered part of Europe? And if this is Western Europe, why wouldn't Italy be in Western Europe? Because I don't know a lot about Europe, obviously. Then, but
larger than all of Western
my
Europe
thought. Why wouldn't
combined.
Italy
The
be part of
cost of
Western
this
Europe?
green initiative is
south of that,
$56.2
not
billion,
east of it.
and the timeline extends over 72 years, $0.2 billion, and the timeline extends over 72 years, from 1978 to 2050. As of 2024, however, they have already completed 3,000 kilometers of this green barrier, and with today's technology, it appears that the project will be finished earlier than anticipated. Since 1978, China has planted over 100 billion trees across an area larger than all of California. Now, you might be thinking, planting trees in a desert? How is that even possible? And more importantly, is it actually working? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore. The way China is building this green wall isn't just about digging holes and dropping seeds. They're using science in ways that nobody has tried before. The project splits northern China into 3 distinct zones. Each one faces its own challenges. In the northwest, they're dealing with less than 200 millimeters of rain per year. That's about the same as the Sahara Desert. To beat these impossible conditions, Chinese scientists created something they call the fish scale pit. Picture a series of crescent-shaped dips in the ground, each one designed to catch and hold every precious drop of rain. This simple but brilliant innovation increased tree survival rates from 20% to an impressive 80%. But the real game-changing work is happening in laboratories across China. Scientists have developed 85 new types of trees specifically for this project. Take the new version of the Siberian elm they've created. Its roots can reach down 80 meters. That's as deep as a 26-story building. And it can survive on just 100 millimeters of annual rainfall. Now, let's talk about what all this work has achieved so far. The results of these innovations have been remarkable. Since 1978, China has planted 100 billion trees. Think about that number for a moment. 100 billion. That's enough trees to circle the Earth 60 times if you place them side by side. But numbers only tell part of the story. Let's look at what this massive tree planting campaign has actually achieved. Forest coverage in northern China has jumped from 5% to 13.5% in just 4 decades. China alone created 25% of all new green space on Earth between 2000 and 2017.
Nice.
Remember those dust storms I mentioned earlier? Their frequency has dropped by 81%. Beijing now sees blue skies more often than yellow ones. But this project isn't just changing the environment, it's transforming lives. Areas that were once barren wastelands are now producing fruits, nuts, and timber. New forest-related industries have created millions of jobs. Former desert regions are becoming tourist destinations. However, not everything about this massive project is positive. In fact, some scientists are raising serious concerns.
We're Phoenix Energy.
Nothing can be all good, huh? Let's see.
If you are enjoying this video so far, be
Give it
sure
a
to
like,
give it a
share,
big
subscribe,
thumbs
leave a
up.
comment.
While China's Great Green Wall shows promise, it faces serious challenges. The biggest concern isn't the trees or the sand, it's water. When you're planting forests in areas that get as little rain as the Sahara, every drop counts. Scientists worry that these new forests might actually disrupt natural water cycles. Some areas are already seeing their groundwater levels drop as trees consume more water than the land can naturally provide. There's another issue that might not be obvious at first glance. Many of these forests are monocultures, huge areas planted with just one type of tree. While this might seem efficient, it creates vulnerable ecosystems. A single disease or pest could potentially wipe out entire sections of the forest barrier. Imagine a city where everyone has exactly the same immune system. One disease could wipe out the entire population. That's the risk these monoculture forests face. In some regions, the desert is still expanding faster than trees can be planted. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it. Local officials report that in certain areas, they're replanting the same sections multiple times as sand dunes overtake their previous efforts. But China is not backing down from these challenges. Instead, they're adapting their approach, and some of their solutions are truly innovative. Scientists are now developing new drought-resistant tree varieties specifically for this project. They're also experimenting with advanced irrigation techniques that use up to 70% less water. The strategy is evolving too. Instead of relying solely on trees, they're now creating diverse ecosystems with shrubs, grasses, and multiple tree species. This approach not only requires less water, but creates more resilient forests. Looking ahead, China plans to secure 2 million more hectares of desertified land by 2025. They're also investing in new sand control technologies that could revolutionize desert management globally. So, is China's Great Green Wall a success or a failure? The answer isn't simple. What we're seeing is both a triumph of human determination and a lesson in ecological complexity. Yes, the project has successfully pushed back against desertification in many areas, but it's also teaching us valuable lessons about the delicate balance of ecosystems. The world is watching this experiment closely. From Africa to Central Asia, countries are studying China's Great Green Wall. Nearly 1,000 specialists from 87 different countries have trained in China's desert control methods. The project's influence stretches far beyond China's borders. These new forests are capturing millions of tons of carbon dioxide annually, making them a powerful weapon against climate change. The project has created what experts call a carbon sink, essentially a massive natural storage system for greenhouse gases. Take Africa's Great Green Wall initiative. Inspired by China's success, 11 countries are working together to build a green barrier across the entire width of Africa to hold back the Sahara Desert. What we're seeing in China is more than just a massive tree planting project. It's a blueprint for how humans might repair some of the damage we've done to our planet. The battle between forest and desert continues, but for the first time in human history, we're seeing that it's possible to push back against desertification if we're willing to think big enough and learn from our mistakes. So, what do you think about this massive environmental makeover? Could similar approaches work in other parts of the world? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
So from cars to deserts to even how China interacts with the world, they do things differently than America and the West. So very different than what I'm used to, like what I grew up seeing my country do. This is the last video I'm gonna show, but I'm not gonna show it all. Again, all the links will be in the description. This is China is making a megaport in Peru.
Reach Asian markets for decades, facing crippling logistics costs that make their exports uncompetitive. China's bold solution? Build a massive $3.6 billion deep-water megaport in Peru that could transform global shipping routes and give South American goods direct access to Asian markets. The only issue, growing concerns about Chinese influence in Latin America. And yeah,
It's so weird they talk about China's influence as China's doing this Belt and Road thing. What's wrong with trying to get influence? That's what you do with anything. You want influence, you talk to people. That's why you talk to people, to make them, not make them, but like get them to learn something, know something, do something, whatever. I mean, influence doesn't mean bad. It just means that if you help people out, like, I mean, a lot of nonprofits, a lot of people are nice people, coaches and stuff. They talk, they do things to get influence. It's just, there's nothing wrong with that. And the way they go around doing it, they do it by building ports and bridges and roads and things. We go around with our army killing people.
the United States watching nervously as Beijing establishes a major foothold in what Washington has traditionally considered its backyard. Currently, ships carrying goods between China and Peru's west coast must travel through the Panama Canal, adding significant time to their journey. The new deepwater port reduces shipping time between Peru and Shanghai from 35 days to just 23 days. This is the port of Chankai, one of the most ambitious and controversial infrastructure projects of the decade.
What's the best way to
A project that could rewrite the rules of global trade, tilt the balance of power in the Americas, and spark an environmental showdown, all because of a single megaport in Peru. Right now, China's state-owned company, COSCO Shipping, is racing to finish this $3.5 billion deep-water port. They're calling it the Shanghai of South America, a direct gateway to buy.
See, we had the banana wars in South America. We overthrow leaders and lead coups in South America where they build ports and we're talking about, oh, well, they're doing it for nefarious means. I mean, really?
Past the US-controlled shipping lanes and slash travel times between Asia and Latin America by 2 weeks. But here's the billion-dollar question. Is this a win-win for Peru or a strategic move by China to expand its influence in the Americas? Let's find out in this video.
Can it be both?
Peru's always been in a prime spot for Pacific trade, but there's been one big problem: infrastructure. For decades, South American exports have struggled to compete globally due to sky-high shipping costs and lengthy transit times. The story of Chankai megaport begins in 2008, when Peru first identified the need for a modern deepwater port to enhance its trade capabilities. For years, the project existed mainly on paper, with limited progress toward actual construction. Then comes China with its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. Beijing's been eyeing Latin America as the next frontier in its global trade strategy. And in 2019, they found the perfect opportunity: Chankai, Peru. This sleepy fishing town, just 60 kilometers north of Lima, had something special: a natural deep water harbor. COSCO Shipping saw the potential immediately and acquired a 60% stake in the project for $1.3 billion, injecting the capital and technical expertise needed to move forward. This marked the first phase of what would become a multi-stage development plan. But here's where things get complicated. The US has long considered Latin America its backyard, and suddenly, China's building what could become the Shanghai of South America,
Monroe Doctrine.
right on America's doorstep. Washington's not thrilled. Meanwhile, Peru finds itself caught in a delicate dance between two superpowers. Construction accelerated rapidly after COSCO's involvement. The first phase included dredging the harbor to a depth of 17 meters to accommodate large vessels, building breakwaters to protect the port from ocean currents, and developing the initial container terminals. Despite challenges from the COVID-19 pandemic, construction continued through 2020 and beyond. By 2023, the basic port infrastructure was taking shape, with specialized equipment arriving from China for installation. The project reached a major milestone in November 2024, when Chinese President Xi Jinping and Peruvian President Dina Boluarte officially inaugurated the port's first operational phase. This ceremony highlighted the political significance of the project for both nations and signaled the beginning of operations at what is now South America's largest and most technologically advanced port. But how exactly is this megaport supposed to work? And what makes it so game-changing for global shipping? Let's dive into the details. First, location is everything. Chankai sits just 60 kilometers north of Lima, perfectly positioned on Peru's central coast with direct access to the Pacific. This location provides natural advantages, including deep waters close to shore and minimal tidal variations, allowing for efficient port operations year-round. The physical infrastructure is equally impressive. A 1,200-meter-long main breakwater creates a protected harbor deep enough to accommodate 18,000 TEU vessels, those colossal ships capable of carrying the equivalent of 18,000 20-foot containers. To put that into perspective, a single vessel can transport as much cargo as 9,000 semi-trucks. Spanning an impressive 992 hectares, roughly the size of 1,400 football fields,
Jeez.
the port includes 15 specialized berths designed to handle the world's largest container ships. Additionally, the main channel has been dredged to a depth of 17 meters, making it accessible to vessels too large to pass through the Panama Canal. Costco's building this megaport in 2 ambitious phases. Phase 1, which is racing toward completion, includes 4 berths, 2 for containers and 2 multi-purpose berths. But that's just the beginning. Phase 2 will add 11 more berths,
China be
creating
doing
a
things, man. They be
maritime
planning
complex
stuff, too.
that rivals ports on China's own coastline. And check this out. They're boring a 1.8-kilometer tunnel straight through the coastal mountains. This engineering marvel will connect the operational zone to a massive logistics complex inland. This tunnel separates port traffic from local roads, allowing for continuous container movement without disrupting surrounding communities.
I've been following you, Russell, since
Speaking of following, we're over 210 followers, subscribers now. Keep
When
doing
fully
that.
operational, the port will handle 1 million 20-foot equivalent units annually. For context, that's enough capacity to process about 30% of Peru's entire maritime trade in a single facility. When all construction phases are complete, capacity will increase to 3.5 million TEUs per year, positioning it among the highest capacity ports on South America's Pacific coast. The automation is next level. We're talking AI-powered cranes that can load and unload containers without human operators.
Uh-oh.
These systems, developed in Shanghai's automated terminals, can handle up to 30 containers per hour, roughly 50% faster than the manual.
With all this AI and automation, there's almost no jobs that humans are better at, right? Other than like maybe teaching and coaching, but I don't know. Like, what are people supposed to do when all the jobs are taken? And people are like, oh, capitalism, you got to make money through working, but there are no jobs because just they're done better by everything else. How you going to buy stuff? What's going to happen? That doesn't make any sense.
Operations currently used in most South American ports. Costco is also implementing what they call a digital twin of the entire port, a real-time virtual replica that tracks every container, truck, and ship movement. This system, powered by Huawei cloud infrastructure, will optimize operations down to the minute. This all sounds impressive on paper, but what does it actually mean for Peru's economy? And more importantly, who really benefits from this massive Chinese investment? When you're pouring $3.5 billion into a single infrastructure project, the economic ripples are bound to be massive. But who's really cashing in on this megaport?
Oh,
For Peru, the numbers look pretty impressive on paper. We're talking about a projected $4.5 billion annual economic benefit once the port is fully operational. That's roughly 1.8% of Peru's entire GDP from a single project. Not too shabby, right? Jobs are a big selling point too. The Peruvian government is touting around 8,000 new positions, from construction crews to port operators to logistics specialists. But critics point out that many specialized roles are being filled by Chinese workers,
oh,
not locals. And there's genuine concern about what happens when the construction phase ends. Where Peru definitely wins is logistics costs. Currently, getting goods from Peru to Asia is like taking a taxi across town when you could have walked. Expensive and inefficient. Chankai changes that equation dramatically. The new port slashes shipping times by up to 2 weeks and could reduce logistics costs by as much as 15% for Peruvian exports. But let's be real, China wouldn't be bankrolling this if they were not getting something major in return. So what's Beijing's angle here? For China, Chankai is like finding the perfect shortcut on your daily commute. It gives them enhanced access to South America's vast resources. Copper from Chile, lithium from Bolivia, soybeans from Brazil, all flowing more efficiently to.
so China goes and builds a port so they can access the stuff, the minerals, the ground stuff that they want from South America, where I assume they're going to pay for it, right? Like they're not going to build this port and then steal the stuff, right? They're going to have to pay for it. Where the West, they see coal, copper, whatever, titanium and stuff in the ground, and they go kill you for it, and they just take it from you. Like, why? It's so weird that America or the West is talking about Oh, they're trying to get influence. Yeah, no shit. Who doesn't want influence? Everybody wants influence. That's just part of being alive. You want to be able to influence your children. You want to influence your wife or husband. You want to influence the stuff around you so that you have a good life and that your kids have a good life and that they have a good life. Or you could be crazy and influence in a way that it's not good for everybody else and just good for you or something. I mean, that's possible, but it's so weird that China goes to places and they just build these big, beautiful things that they gotta leave there. They can't take it. They're not taking things from these people. They're taking things to these people and showing these people stuff and giving them things or building things, helping them or whatever, whatever. And then they're like, okay, you have resources that we want to access. We're gonna build you a port so we can access your resources that we're going to pay for. What is wrong with that's way better than the Western model or the capitalist model or the American model.
Chinese factories. The port also creates a direct pipeline for Chinese exports into a market of over 430 million consumers.
Get resources
Everything
and
from
consumers.
electronics to fast fashion brands like Shein can now flood South American markets faster and cheaper than ever before.
And it's funny how China's the communist and this and that. They go around the world doing good, building things, making commerce faster, easier, cheaper, better. But the capitalists, they go around the world making things more expensive and harder to do and putting caps on things and saying, oh, I got a you can't do this because I got a patent. I got a this, I got a that. You can only do so much. You can't bring these things in here because I'm gonna put a tariff on it. China doesn't do that type of stuff.
But perhaps most valuable to Beijing, this port gives China a strategic foothold in what the US has traditionally considered its backyard. It's a massive win for China's global influence campaign and a key puzzle piece in their Belt and Road Initiative. The regional implications are just as fascinating. Ports in Chile and Colombia are suddenly scrambling to upgrade their facilities. Why? Because Chankai could siphon off massive amounts of shipping traffic from neighboring countries. We're potentially witnessing the birth of an entirely new trade pattern in South America. Countries like Bolivia and Brazil might soon find it more efficient to route their Asian exports through Peru rather than shipping from their own coast. All of this economic reshuffling comes with a price tag, though, and it's not just measured in dollars and cents. When a superpower invests billions in infrastructure halfway around the world, there are always strings attached. So what exactly is China's geopolitical endgame here? And how is Washington responding to this Chinese incursion into America's traditional sphere of influence? That's where things get really interesting. Let's be clear about something. Chankai is not just a port. It's a chess move in a much larger geopolitical game China's playing across Latin America. Over the past decade, China has pumped more than $160 billion into Latin America. We are talking about energy
And so when America does that, when the United States pumps $160 billion into a country, it's with bullets and tanks and bombs and things that they don't normally want, right? Like, let's see what China does when they pump $160 billion into a country.
Latin America. We are talking about energy projects in Venezuela, lithium mines in Bolivia, and now this megaport in Peru. This is not random investment. It's a coordinated campaign to reshape the economic and political landscape of an entire region. Chankai represents what analysts are calling.
And see, I wouldn't say that was true. Like the economic landscape, maybe, but the political landscape, I hear like most of the things I've seen about China when they go in, they don't even talk about your politics. You can be Muslim, you can be Christian, you can hate gays, you can love gays. They're like, whatever you want to do, you do you. We just want to do the economics. We want your resources. We want to pay you for them. We'll build these projects and then we'll get out of here. So, like, I'm not saying that that's good or bad, but China doesn't seem to really want to tell other people how to do their politics. China's just like, all right, you know, you're you, we're us, you let us be us, we'll let you be you.
BRI 2.0, the next evolution of China's Belt and Road Initiative. But unlike earlier BRI, projects that sometimes left countries drowning in debt.
If you have ever wanted to land a 100 to... Listen up.
Oh.
Beijing's getting smarter with its approach in Peru. Meanwhile, in Washington, alarm bells are ringing. The Pentagon's 2024 strategic assessment analysts are calling BRI 2.0, the next evolution of China's Belt and Road Initiative. But unlike earlier BRI, projects that sometimes left countries drowning in debt, Beijing's getting smarter with its approach in Peru. Meanwhile,
Oh, so now they're not going to be leaving people drowning in debt, right? So that they're getting smarter. So they're learning from their mistakes. And they're not trying to drown people in debt then if they're learning from their mistakes, right? And I've heard that China, they've forgiven a lot of the debt and whatnot that for the projects that they've done in places and just been like, we just want to be able to use your port. We just want to access your resources. We'll still pay you for your resources. Maybe give us a discount because we built the port and you can't pay us for it or whatever. But like in Sri Lanka, there was one where they made a port that I guess they couldn't pay off or they couldn't handle or something. So China's like, oh, we'll run it for 100 years. And then in 100 years, we'll revisit the thing and see if you guys can handle it. Then we'll teach you how to do it and all this stuff. But for 100 years, it's still way better than going in there with guns and bombs and telling them, oh, you got to change everything about yourself and give us what we want pretty much for free.
in Washington, alarm bells are ringing. The Pentagon's 2024 strategic assessment explicitly flags Chankai as a potential dual-use facility that could support Chinese naval operations in the Western Hemisphere. The White House has been scrambling to counter China's infrastructure diplomacy, but they're playing catch-up. While Beijing
Infrastructure diplomacy, I like that.
offers billions in concrete investments, Washington's response has largely been, well, more speeches about the dangers of working with China.
Big speech,
In
yo.
2024, a high-level U.S. trade delegation rushed to Lima offering alternative
Is that better with
partnerships.
the beard?
But you know what they didn't bring? The $1 billion that China already has on the table.
Right?
This puts Peru in an incredibly delicate position. They're essentially performing a diplomatic high-wire act, balancing Chinese investment against American pressure.
Trying not to get murdered
Peru's
by the
new
Americans.
administration insists they can maintain good relations with both superpowers. As President Figueroa recently put it, Peru doesn't need to choose sides. We can be a bridge between East and West.
That would
But
be wonderful.
here's the reality. Peru
Some
exports
Green Party
3
stuff right
times
there.
more to China than to the US. And Chinese investment in Peruvian mining alone topped $10 billion last year. Those economic realities make it hard to stay neutral when push comes to shove. There's also growing
Don't push
domestic
and don't shove,
backlash.
kids.
Nationalist politicians are framing Chankai as a sovereignty issue. One opposition leader dramatically declared in parliament, "We are trading our independence for Chinese yuan." The geopolitical stakes couldn't be higher. China's building more than a port. They are establishing what could become their most important economic and potentially strategic outpost in the Western Hemisphere. And they're doing it just as US-China competition reaches a boiling point. But amid all this great power politics, what about the environmental and social costs? Because for local communities, those concerns are far more immediate than geopolitical chess moves. While politicians and business leaders debate trade routes and geopolitics, there's another story unfolding on the ground. Near the construction site sits the Santa Rosa wetlands, a fragile ecosystem that's home to 76 bird species,
love the
including
birds.
some that are endangered. Environmental groups warn that the massive port could fundamentally alter this delicate habitat through pollution, noise, and changes to water flow patterns. There's also a gold rush mentality taking hold. Land prices in Chankai have skyrocketed by 300% in some areas. Speculators are buying up properties, pushing out locals who can no longer afford to live in their own town. So, how is Costco responding to these concerns? The company points to their comprehensive environmental impact assessment, a 1,200-page document that concluded the port would have manageable effects on the local ecosystem.
Manageable.
They've also launched a community engagement program, promising $15 million for local development projects and pledging to prioritize local hiring when possible. The controversy has spawned multiple
possible.
legal challenges. Currently, there are 27 separate lawsuits pending against the project, from environmental injunctions to indigenous rights claims to complaints about the consultation process. U.S. ports on the West Coast are watching these developments nervously. Ports like Los Angeles and Long Beach could see decreased transshipment activity as goods bypass North America entirely en route to South American markets. All of this is unfolding against the backdrop of continued U.S.-China economic tensions. What we are witnessing is nothing less than a restructuring of Pacific trade patterns. Chankai doesn't just add a new port to the map. It potentially rewrites which countries and companies benefit most from global commerce. And with U.S. influence in Latin America waning as Chinese investment surges, the economic ripple effects could reshape geopolitical alliances for decades to come. So, what do you think? Is China's port strategy in Latin America a win-win partnership or a modern form of economic colonialism? And would you support similar projects in your country? Let us know your
So I think China goes around the world in a better, more humane way than the United States, but that's not really hard. I guess we go around murdering everybody. So, but China builds things. They try to make influence because they build things. They want to make either friendships or consumers and access to what do you call it, resources and whatnot. So I mean, everybody wants that, right? You want friends, you want resources, you want things that make life good. But it's the way you go about it. Do you build your friends' homes and ports and bridges and say, hey, can we share and I'll give you some stuff for your stuff, or do you go over there with guns and weapons and bombs and say, oh, I'm taking your shit? There's a big difference in that. So I prefer the way China does it. I don't know. Some people like to just take your shit. But we get all the views from across the spectrum,